Welcome to the 4 Pillars of Men's Health, a podcast of resources for restoring vigor and vitality, bringing you top influencers in the men's health arena, case studies of men who have succeeded and how they did it, and cutting-edge teaching on men's health issues from America's leading men's health guru, Dave Skattum. Get ready to take steps towards good health. Here's your host, Dave Skattum.
Hey, welcome back to the 4 Pillars of Men's Health. Hey, I'm really glad you're sticking with this and you're still with us on this. Today, we're going to be talking about baby steps. And when you use the word baby, it's not like a real manly term, but in this case, it's the way to go. And one of my great privileges, and I just feel like it's something that's so incredible that I'm able to do is this thing called, I love trail running. And we live in southwest Montana, bumped up right next to the Absaroka Beartooth Wilderness. And my goal is to run every trail in the Absaroka Beartooth Wilderness. Google that, the Absaroka Beartooth Wilderness. It's an amazing place. There's almost 750 miles of trails, and it's very rural. And so it's way out in the boonies, and I just love it. And a couple years ago, it was just such an exciting point in my life where I was able to go out with my son Josh, and we did my first ever what we call an ultra run. And so an ultra run is defined as anything over 26.2 miles. And typically people are ultra runners and they run on flat ground. But we were up in the mountains and we did this ultra run, and we went, somewhere between 26 and 30 miles. I can't remember exactly, but it was the first time I'd ever broke that 26-mile barrier. And it was just fun being out there and seeing these beautiful sights and incredible experience being up on these mountain passes, down the valleys, and just seeing all the different terrain that's out there, and doing it with my son is such a boost for me. But you know what? Here's the deal. It wasn't probably, it'd been 10 or 15 years ago when I first started this health journey. I could not run. I physically could not run. If I would have tried to run even like 10 steps, I probably would have pulled something or caused some kind of a disaster. And so you might ask, how did this guy get from that, being in that condition, to being able to run an ultra trail run in the mountains? And by the way, this year, this is 2022, my younger son and I are planning on running a 50-mile up in the Absaroka Beartooth Wilderness. So stay tuned for that. We'll see how that works out. So it's pretty unpredictable when you do those kinds of things. But my point is, how was it that I was overweight and my cardiovascular system couldn't handle running, my skeletal system couldn't handle running, my muscular system couldn't handle running, my mental system couldn't handle running? It was all like a disaster. So how is it that you go from poor health like that, not being able to run, to being able to run 50 miles in one shot? How is that? And here it is. Baby steps. It's baby steps. You've got to start with small little increments. And that's the way you do it. And it took me 3 years before I could even run 4 or 5 miles up in the mountains, let alone 50 miles. I had to learn all kinds of things about equipment. What kind of equipment should I be bringing? What shoes work good up in the mountains? You can't have big clunking shoes if you're going to be running, and you can't have flat tennis shoes because they get no traction. You have to figure out what kind of clothes to wear. Sometimes when you're running up in the mountains, it could be 70 degrees down on the lower elevations. And when you climb up to 10 or 12,000 feet, it's like below freezing and windy. You got to figure all that stuff out. You got to figure out a hydration system. How do you keep yourself going for those hours of with liquid water and nutrition? How do you do that? I had to figure all that stuff out. How, like, survival stuff. What happens if something happens up there in the mountains and you're way back in the boonies? You have to be able to survive. So I found a way to pack a tent. I found a way to pack a raincoat, and some other survival gear, and I figured all that stuff out. How about predators up there? We got grizzly bears and mountain lions, and all. So what do you do about that? I had to figure all that stuff out, and so it took a process of learning to figure that stuff out, and that's what I want to encourage you with today in your health to good, in your journey to good health. Is it takes baby steps. If just imagine 15 years ago, if I would have tried running up in the mountains, it would have been a total disaster. I may have wrecked my body permanently and not been able to enjoy what I'm enjoying today. If I would have tried to go from 0 to 100 in 1 week, it just doesn't work that way. You gotta take some baby steps. And so I just want to move through a few of my thoughts on what it meant for me to take baby steps, because I took baby steps in all areas of my 4 pillars. Spiritually, accurate thinking, mentally, I put a lot of work into that one. Nutrition and exercise, they all took little steps. And so that's what I want to encourage you with today. Don't try and go from 0 to 100. Figure out a way to take some baby steps that will make it so that you can do this long term. All right? So that's what we want to talk about today. So the first thing I want to talk about is just, what does it mean? Learning to take these baby steps. What exactly does that mean? I can tell you, I've interviewed a lot of successful people, and every one of them have alluded to or talked about taking little steps. Very successful people take little steps to get more money. They take more little steps to learn more about their business. They take little steps for all kinds of things. And you can incorporate this into your relationships with other people, with your spouse. What does it take to make your spouse happy? And it's a learning process. And we've been married, my wife and I, Lori, have been married over 35 years. And I'm still learning. I'm still learning about that. So it's really important. There's a saying about eat an elephant. I don't really like that saying, because it doesn't seem like an elephant would really taste that good. But the saying is, how do you eat an elephant? How do you do it? One bite at a time. You can't be chugging that thing down in one little bite or one little session. So that's what we need to focus on today, is taking those little steps, whether it's in your spiritual life or your accurate thinking. How do you change the way you think? Maybe you've gone through some devastating stuff and it's ground you down to where you think that you just can't do any better. But that's not the truth. And how do you get out of that? And we're going to be talking about that in this course. And don't be ashamed of that. Be ready to admit where you're at. That's where it starts. Where are you at? Where was I at? I was almost 250 pounds. I couldn't run, so you know what I did? I found that old junker bike up in our green boxes and I pulled that thing out, and I could run. I could ride my bike, but I couldn't run. And after I rode my bike for a while, I got my cardiovascular system in shape, and some of my muscles a little better. And then I found out that I could actually run again. And I just ran. I didn't run very far, but I started running just a little bit, and one step led to another. And it took those little baby steps. Now, one thing about the baby step idea is it does seem like when you're at the beginning stages, it seems like forever. I mean, first of all, when I started exercising, I never thought that I would ever be able to do like a 50-mile run in the mountains. That never even entered my head. But once I became better and better at it, I thought, wow, I want to run up to one of these lakes I used to visit when I was a kid. And so one day I just took off and I ran up there, and it was incredible. And it just one thing led to another. And but the thing that sometimes can get discouraging about the baby step process is it just seems like it's going to take forever. And so one thing I want to encourage you with, and one thing that I do, is I celebrate small or mini victories. So, for example, I was trying to get away from Dr. Pepper. I'm telling you, I had this horrible addiction. It was an actual addiction to Dr. Pepper. It was ugly. And here's what I do. I'd get up in the morning on my way to work. I'd stop by our local gas station, and at that time they had these drinks called the Big Gulp, and it was 64 ounces, and it was like $1.59. So you'd buy this big, huge jug of Dr. Pepper or whatever you want to put in there, and 64 ounces, and I would suck that thing down all morning while I was working. Drank that whole thing, 64, and it makes me cringe just thinking that I did that. And then at lunchtime they had these things. It was free refills, so I would go back to the gas station, fill that sucker back up, 64 ounces of liquid poison, and suck that thing down for the rest of the afternoon. So in one day I would drink 130 ounces of this garbage, and I tried so many times to quit drinking Dr. Pepper, and I could not do it. I just couldn't do it. And I knew that it was destroying my body, and I knew that I had to, in order for me to get back to a healthy place, I had to kick that habit. And so I did little baby steps. I just started weaning myself off of that stuff. The first thing I did was I quit going to that gas station I went to all the time. So even though I get a can of Dr. Pepper, it wouldn't be the 64-ounce jug. And so anyway, I just took these baby steps, and it was probably a couple years before I was able to quit. And the thing that finally broke the back of that addiction was fasting. I had a time of fasting in my life where I just focused on the whole point of my fasting. That time was examining my nutritional health. And I was able to, after that, I never had I haven't had a Dr. Pepper for probably 10 years. And it's a miraculous thing to me to think back of how much that Dr. Pepper had its claws in my whole system. And it's just like, it's incredible to think that I took those baby steps and I was able to beat that habit. So that's what I mean by celebrating small or mini victories. And when you do that, it gives you a sense of accomplishment. Like, okay, if I can get this one next step in, that'll be good. And then I can make it to the next step. Then I can make it to the next step. And before long, you've really done some amazing stuff. And the people around you will look at you like, what in the world happened to you? And it's because of those little baby steps. And they probably won't see those baby steps, but you will. And they're hard, but you need to take them, and you need to do that. And it just reduces the anxiety of thinking, wow, if I want to kick a habit, here I am drinking 130 ounces of Dr. Pepper. I want to not be drinking any. How do I get there? It's a little baby steps. And you think, okay, so I don't have to get clear over here. All I have to do is get to this next step. So it helps with reducing anxiety. So So that's some great ideas about why it is important to take many steps and to celebrate many victories. All right. The next thing is just some things for you to consider, some examples of maybe setting some goals for yourself. And I just want to focus on these two areas, nutrition and exercise. And again, this is kind of, we talked about this with Dr. Pepper, but each one of us have these vices of things we eat that we shouldn't be eating. And along with my Dr. Pepper habit, I also was addicted to McDonald's, these big, huge bacon burger things. And I knew that stuff was just killing me. And I want you to just know this, is that I couldn't just stop that stuff all in one shot and flip a new leaf and become a new person. It's a journey through this process of good health. And so I want to encourage you, if you do have some bad things that you are doing, it might be some emotional things that you do to yourself. It might be some inaccurate thinking that you're doing to yourself. It might be food that you're eating. It might be not getting out and exercising enough. It could be anything. But you really need to focus on developing good habits and taking baby steps to get you to the place where you want to be. Another area that you might want to set some goals is in the area of exercise. So just depending on where you're at, if you're stuck on the couch like I am, don't try and pick up football or basketball or do some crazy stuff. Take little steps to acclimate your body to get into good health. Take little steps. That's the key to this whole thing. And it can be useful in, just like I said, any area of your life. So make sure and take these baby steps. Here's a couple other things that I just want to briefly touch on is in our society, in the United States in particular, and probably other areas of the world, it seems like every few years these fads come through. Like you can look at women's clothes or men's clothes. Fads come and go. You can look at diet and exercise program. It's just incredible the craziness that happens. All of a sudden, somebody found this orchard fruit from Nairobi or something, and it's supposed to cure cancer and all these different magical stuff. So everybody, gets on the bandwagon, gets the Nairobi fruit juice and starts drinking it, and they think it's good. So these fads just come and go in the United States. It's just incredible that the amount of things that happen, the exercise fads, accurate thinking fads, all spiritual fads. A great guru comes in and talks about some spiritual thing in his life, and it's just fads come and go. And I just want to encourage you to find your way through this stuff, and don't go down all the bunny trails. I mean, there's so many things out there, so many ideas. Make sure that when you're going through this process that you're basing your choices on good, sound science and something that that is working for you. Don't do it just because your neighbor, lost 20 pounds and they said, you got to try this stuff. And so just keep that in mind. And then, so don't follow all the fads. Sometimes it's good to explore those things, and sometimes there are good new things, and so use your judgment on that. The next thing is we've kind of already alluded to this, but don't set too big of goals all at once. Take the baby steps. Don't do measurable, concise, small goals, and then celebrate that victory. All right? Do that. Don't try and change yourself overnight, and it'll just make you a better person. And it's the shortest way, although it does seem like it takes a long time. And so here's one last thing I just want to say to you. I have this loop. I kind of live in this valley, and there's a river that runs through the Yellowstone River. It's amazing. And I have this loop that I go around. It's a 17-mile bike loop. So I go up and around, and it gets me right back to my place here. And it took me a long time, many years, to even be able to ride that 17-mile loop. It has some good hills in it. But anyway, so just probably after I was able to get kind of going and I could ride that thing all in one shot without getting off my bike and taking a nap, I got to the point where it's 17 miles, so I got to the point where I could ride that thing in 1 hour, which is pretty good for me. 17 miles an hour. And I thought, wow, so I wonder if I could do this in like a little faster than this. So I just kept working on it. And if you'll remember, my bike journey started with this old red bike from the dumpster. And I just got on that thing. And I remember the first bike ride that I took. I got out on that thing and I went up my road, probably about a mile to a mile and a half. And I felt pretty good. And I started coming back, and then I started feeling like, whoa, something's going on here in my body. And by the time I got home, I think I pushed it the last 100 yards. And I was literally down on the couch, like I was sore like for 10 days. I couldn't hardly walk. And I was on the couch for at least a day, just like in agony for my lower back, leaning over, riding that thing. And it was really bad. And that's what happens, when you try and take too big of a step at one time. So just keep in mind, it just takes baby steps. And by the way, I'm up to, now it's incrementally as you go faster and faster on your bike, it's harder and harder to make big strides. But now I'm up to, I can ride that loop in about 50 minutes. So I'm down to about, I'm up to about 20 miles an hour on that, as long as the wind's not blowing and everything's good that day. So it just keeps, I can improve and improve and improve. And it's just fantastic to see. And so I just want, just take it easy, set yourself some goals, make them small, and just keep moving forward. That's the whole point of this session. Take baby steps, and you'll be so much more happy. And thanks for joining me today. Tomorrow, or the next session, whenever you listen to it, it's going to be on about creating a new you. And I have 10 great concepts about how to do that and what worked for me and how you can take steps to create a new you. And so until then, set yourself some goals, take some baby steps, and celebrate some mini victories.
You've been listening to the 4 Pillars of Men's Health with Dave Skattum. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit the4pillarsofmenshealth.com.